It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, April 28th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's finally going to have to confront that goalie problem.
Oh, yeah.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade, and I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn every TV into an Xbox with no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. And to keep up with all of our episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we are going to dig into how the Flyers goalies performed this season and kind of what's next. Plus, we'll have our Nemesis of the week because it is Monday. However, do want to touch base before we do more of a deep dive on tomorrow's show for Phantoms Tuesday. Phantoms are moving on in their Calder Cup playoff series. Really cool. So they won game 2 against Pittsburgh and didn't have to go to that game 3 and go back to Wilkes-Barre, which is really nice for them. Helge Grans with an incredible game-winning goal.
Yeah, that was great.
Did not expect to say that sentence, but it was a really great goal.
It really was.
And I think Jet Luchenko played really well in the series. So we're going to talk about all that and more. We're still, as of recording, waiting for the winner of Providence versus Springfield to then they reseed the bracket. So We'll figure out who they play next and talk about it on tomorrow's show. So the Flyers goaltenders, we know that this has been a source of consternation this entire season. It has been fraught. We had 3 goaltenders in, I would say, not rotation for a good percentage of the season because they wanted to keep Aleksei Kolosov at the NHL level so he could get the NHL salary, but then they didn't play him. And it was a mess. Like I cannot come up with any other word to describe it than that, right?
No, it is a mess. And right now, if you were parachuted in, you wouldn't think Aleksei Kolosov's even part of the organization anymore.
Right. It is really, really awkward at best. And I think it did have an impact on the performance of everybody this season behind the net, because as we know, goaltenders are creatures of habit, super into routine. And when you have 3 goalies, that affects practice and who does what where and who's in one net, who's getting the reps. And you also have a condition where guys just aren't playing at the rate that they normally do, and that affects them. So all of that being said, when you look at the season, the regular season in the NHL, for goalie team stats, the Flyers had the 5th worst goals against per game at 3.45, the absolute worst combined save percentage at 879. Other smaller stats, they had 10 overtime losses this season, which not great, not entirely the goalie's fault either. So
no, but I mean, some of that falls on the goalie like it falls on the quarterback in the NFL.
Exactly. Now, the one bright spot statistically for the Flyers goaltenders, they were actually really good in the shootout this year and had the 7th best shootout save percentage. And that's mostly Sam Ersson, because that is a specific skill that he has and does very well. And he continued to do that this season. But when you look at how the distribution of games were this season, Sam Ersson played 47 games, Ivan Fedotov played 26, and Aleksei Kolosov played 17. And like, that's awkward, as I said. And as we recall, obviously there were some goalie pull situations here, so this doesn't add up to 82. But you would have strings where Sam Ersson would play a lot. Fedotov would get one game, and then Ersson would get a bunch of games, and then they'd swap it out for Kolosov, and he'd get 2 or 3 games, and then he'd go away for 6 weeks. And it was just really, really awkward. And despite the fact that, 47 games to 26, let's say, for Ersson and Fedotov, they pretty much netted out with the same save percentage on shots on goal, right? And I just find that fascinating that given everything, they both ended up with the same save percentage at basically 883, 880, close enough. And I think both of them were affected negatively by the playing schedule.
Yeah, I think the playing schedule is something that had left to be desired. I think that it can't be all on John because, Kim Dillabaugh sets that schedule. I'm sure John changed it a few times, but still, that's a collaboration. Like, that's something that falls on both of them. And, honestly, like, the reason we have brought up Kim Dillabaugh is because the Flyers goaltending hasn't been good enough since Carter Hart left. Like, that's just the reality. I hear excuses. Sam's injured with this and this is that. And this, we have 2 years of data now and 1 year on Fedotov. And yeah, they're NHL quality goalies, but backups. That's what they appear to be to me. And so that's why you're getting the numbers you're getting. And so, like, Sam, could he get a little better? Sure. But the problem is, and you could point out a stat in a minute, even when you point that out, it's still not better to the point where you're like, we could ride this guy. That's the problem.
Yeah, and that's the difference. It's like, could any of these 3 goaltenders, as we know them now, step up and perform in a playoff series for the Flyers? I don't know the answer to that. I just don't know. And that's what you have to know moving forward, because if your goal is, say, this next year to compete for a playoff spot and the following year to definitely be in the playoffs, who's going to be in net for that? Because you always have to ride a hot goalie, especially late in the season. And that did not happen for the Flyers. I don't think the Flyers got additional wins to any significant level. Did they here and there? Yes, because of a goalie performance. But as a general rule, did they get additional wins because of a goalie? No. They did not this year. And if you look at the scheduling of the games, we know that they like to ride the quote unquote hot goaltender, even if it wasn't that hot in the grand scheme of looking at NHL goaltenders. And you look at Sam Ersson's play. And so, like I said, 47 games that he played in, he started 45 of those. So 2 of them he came in relief. And in those performances, 20 of the 47 games that he played in were done on 1 day's rest. And I really do think that affected him, because if you look at his save percentage on 1 day's rest, 872. Save percentage on 2 days rest, 904. That's a difference. That is a big difference here, right?
It's a difference. It had gotten you more wins for sure, but it's still, like I said, it's still not going to be enough where you're like, because that even 904 is just treading NHL average. And so so I think Flyers fans, when they look at this, have to say, yeah, they need more in net. And certainly Danny's alluding to that, but it's not going to be easy to upgrade this in the offseason.
Yeah. And what's interesting now with Ivan Fedotov, it's a different story. And you can look at the numbers, but you have to honestly say grain of salt, because the data is much lower because he only played in 26 games, right? But if you look at the similar stats for him, he had a lot of games on 4+ days rest because they just weren't playing him for stretches there. And his save percentage in those games where he didn't play a ton was 882. What was his save percentage on 2 days rest? 929. So, working Fedotov in, and we saw that. The eye test proves that. We saw his first game back was flaily and all over the place.
Yep.
And then when he would get some regular games in, he would improve over the course of those subsequent games. And it was very clear that's what was happening. Now, there would be a limit to that, but that was so Ivan Fedotov is the perfect example of a goaltender that you play on a backup schedule.
Right.
Because that is his sweet spot.
Yeah.
Play him every 3 games. He's gold, right? Every 3 or 4 games. That makes sense to me.
No,
But
and it
they
makes
didn't do
sense to
that.
me too. They didn't do that. It does make sense. I would do it for next year if he's there. But, we're all assuming at this point that one of the 2 Russians will be gone. And then it's going to be a battle of whoever they bring into camp and one of them, and Sam will be the 1B. Like, that's what we're assuming right now.
Well, I think that's one way of looking at it, but we're going to dig into all of that and what they should do coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you could just use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
All right. In addition to our Phantoms playoff report tomorrow, we're going to dig a little bit into the Kates line and how they performed this season and what led to their success. So excited to talk about them because it was definitely a huge bright spot in the Flyers season. Plus, we're going to answer your mailbag questions on the Wednesday show. So make sure to get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Send us a message on any of our socials or comment on our YouTube channel. So, Russ, you alluded to what they might do next season as far as bringing in a free agent goaltender and having a camp battle. But I think the big question for me is what is the right order of operations here for the Flyers? Do you net out your Ersson, Fedotov thoughts and decisions and then sort out Kolosov, or do you figure out Kolosov separately from the other 2? Like, is this a 3-person decision-making process or a 2-goalie decision-making process?
No, right now, to me, it's a 2-goalie one. Like, I'm already telling Kolosov, you might as well go back to Belarus because you didn't want to report and play for, our franchise in the playoffs. You don't get to just hang around the NHL, so see ya. That's what I would do with Kolosov. And then with Fedotov, I would say, listen, you're going to battle for a job in camp. If you lose that battle, understand you're going to the AHL, and that's where you'll reside. And if he says no, then I say, see ya.
I don't know that that's the thing the Flyers would do.
I don't either.
That is the doubt that I have. I do think that Fedotov, to my previous point about playing him in the proper way, getting him the reps that he needs, and giving him the support that he needs and the confidence to be like, no, you are our backup goaltender and you're going to get this rotation and you're going to get NHL games and get the opportunity to battle for a starting job. Like, I think that is the part of it that I'm focused on more, that if they do that, then you can jettison Kolosov in the way that you're talking about. But I just don't have confidence that the Flyers are going to put their foot down with Fedotov in the same way that they actually might do with Kolosov and say, if you don't want to play for the Phantoms, have a nice life. Like, right. I feel like there's a different approach with these 2, but what do you think?
No, I think there is a different approach. Like I said, I wouldn't do it, but I do feel it's different. But again, let's just say next year they follow the Rachel plan. They rest these guys the way they want. They do it. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of an uptick. Defense will be a little better. I mean,
it should be with a new coach, right?
Right. But you're not making the playoffs with those 2. So it's like, it'll be improved. Everybody will be happy. It'd be better than, this past season. But that's it. I think that's where I fall short.
Yeah, it's interesting too because everybody's in a contract year next
Right.
year, right?
Which is what
So,
they planned. That's what the Flyers
yep,
wanted.
yep. And so if they decide to not bring in a free agent goaltender and just have these two guys battle it out and say, whichever one of you wants it will earn the contract and will even sign it earlier than the end of the season if it warrants it based on your play, I think that's a decent carrot. But at the same time, I still think you maybe need that outside goaltender, that free agent goaltender to push either one of them to make it to a situation where the Flyers feel like they need to re-sign them versus could re-sign them.
I think the Flyers have to get a free agent goalie on a 2-year deal minimum, because you don't know how this is all going to turn out. You don't know which guys are staying, which are going, and you don't know how the development's going to go. You have to have one that you can count on beyond this season, and that's where the free agent would come in. Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, let's just say the plan was 2 years ago, like, hey, Thatcher Demko after next year is going to be a free agent. We're just going to offer him a boatload of money. Well, since then, he's had a knee injury. And, with this muscle behind the knee injury, he's not quite Thatcher Demko. Now, maybe he'll get it all back. Maybe he won't. Now there's a risk. And this is the problem. John Gibson's got choices on where to go. He's probably not picking Philly. No offense, Philly, but there's going to be other places that need a goalie to make it to the Stanley Cup immediately. But there's also a rumor Joel Quenneville might be going to the Ducks. And if he goes there, he's not going anywhere because they're going to plan on making the playoffs next year. So you know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is it's a complicated situation in the sense that it sounds easy to say, go get a free agent goalie or trade for one. But when you start looking at the market, it's limited.
It's extremely limited. And a lot of the guys that would be of interest are going to re-sign. They just haven't yet, you know? So I think it'll depend a lot on who the new coach is, I think, in terms of who they might attract, to be honest, and what the plan is. So if Danny Briere can sell to free agent goaltenders, look at this new coach we've got in. This group has a slightly tweaked mission moving forward. Here's how you can be a part of it. And there's a huge opportunity for you here to get a number one goaltending spot in the NHL. I think that's a good sell. It's just going to depend on who that coach is to some degree and how well that Briere can sell that idea. Because I do think that's a sellable idea right there.
It is. And again, I'm pretty sure Thatcher Demko is going to get traded, but he's got 1 year on the deal. So that's not an ideal situation. And you have to give up assets. So you're probably looking for something. You don't give up assets. And I've heard the name Freddy Anderson, and I would be against that. And there's a few other names.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you're going to find a guy overseas. I don't know.
Yeah, because to me, I don't want to sign a Freddy Anderson kind of guy or trade for a Freddy Anderson kind of guy, because I think you need somebody that's more than a 1 or 2 year guy. Or has the potential.
The potential for that. Correct.
Yeah, it could be a 1 or 2 year guy, but has the potential to earn a starting goaltending spot for at least another few years. And I don't know. I mean, it's a really tough spot the Flyers are in here. I don't begrudge that at all.
There is one other thing.
Yeah.
Makaniemi, do we have any hope that he could ever play in the NHL? I mean, we haven't seen enough of him. I don't know.
No, because he's been hurt this whole time. And that was the problem where he was before, was that he was hurt all the time. And there's nobody else in the system that's ready to take another step forward. We're
not slagging Parker Gahagan, but he's a 31-year-old goalie. You're not going to
in the AHL, right?
Yeah.
This is his first solid year in the AHL.
Yeah, you're not going to sign
him, but no. Right. So I think it's just a really difficult situation the Flyers are in, partially of their own doing, to a large degree. But I do think, if you bring in that free agent goaltender or trade for somebody, not giving up very much, to your point, there is at least something other than a contract year pushing Fedotov and Ersson And I firmly believe that whoever they bring in has to be able to toe the line to also be willing to go down to the AHL, because I think you have to allow for Sam Ersson and Ivan Fedotov to earn those jobs.
And one more thing. So if you let's say you got lucky and at the end of next year, Zavragin wants to come over. He's going to give you the same spiel that Fedotov did. I came here to be the number one. And you're going to still have the same problem.
Yeah. Especially if they come over early, right?
Right.
I almost don't want them to come over early.
Because then their anticipation is I'm going to be handed the job.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that. And I think it is going to be a huge challenge, but there is a way out of this for Danny Briere. Like we said, it's get a free agent goaltender to push them, make sure it's clear that people can get sent down to the AHL, whether it's that goaltender or Ivan Fedotov. Those two have to be able to be set down in a certain situation. They have to push each other. And then I think then you have to promise the reward, like I said, and say, it won't necessarily take the whole season for us to resign you. If you perform to a certain level, you'll get that reward sooner rather than later. And I think that's the only thing you got. And then there are some additional, potential good free agent goaltenders the following year. And maybe that's when you spend a little bit more capital in order to get that goaltender. Or maybe they draft a really good goaltender in the first round this year.
Not a bad idea, because Carson Bjarnason's good. We don't know how good yet. No idea.
Yeah. No, he should be in the AHL next year. So that much is certain. But a lot of questions, not a lot of answers yet, but there is a plan in there that we just laid out. So hopefully that's what the Flyers do. And if they do or they don't, we'll talk about it. And that's how this thing works. At any rate, it is Monday, and we will have our Nemesis of the week coming up next. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel full longer. And personally, I love the no shells variety because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to crack open the nuts each and every time, but it's the perfect grab and go snack. I also have it at my desk while I'm working, and I actually just reloaded on the Wonderful Pistachios no shells sea salt and vinegar flavor, which I've had a bunch of before, but I just got an 8-pack of it. So I am set for a while. It's so delicious and healthy too. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So before we get to our Nemesis of the week, the NHL playoffs have continued to go on. A lot of fun games, so much overtime. We are recording this before we know the outcome of Sunday's games, but I think, the fact that the series have somewhat followed the pattern for some of the series, where a team goes up 2-0, and then the team that's down gets that one win at home, and then it'll flip back around. We know that that's probably going to happen. Sorry, Ottawa, but I feel like that's the road here for you.
But they're Canada's team. I saw people hashtagging that because the Leafs, either you love them or you hate them. So it's funny that a lot of people are just behind the Ottawa Senators because they hate the Leafs.
That's true. That's true. Well, hating the Leafs is an art form, I think, in Canada. So, and complaining about the Leafs as a Leafs fan is also its own art form. But I think it's been a lot of fun. And to me, obviously, one of the biggest stories is the return of Gabe Landeskog.
Yeah, he's terrific, man.
He looks so good.
He does.
I'm just so impressed. And, he gets on the board in that shutout against Dallas to tie the
Yep.
series on Saturday. And
He's the emotional leader. That's what I said.
he
It's a
is.
big deal.
He is. Yeah, huge deal. And just so happy for him and like his kids and the son. Oh,
Yeah.
so good. So good. Love that. So having a lot of fun with the NHL playoffs so far. As far as our nemesis of the week here, last week I talked about the wait for a new head coach and what it means in terms of the order of operations, in terms of, okay, like how are we going to deal with our free agents this offseason? Who's going to deal with making sure that guys are working on what they need to this offseason? And then getting ready for development camp and training camp, and like who does all that while Bradshaw is kind of twisting in the wind while they're waiting to hire a new coach.
Yeah.
You alluded to Joel Quenneville getting interviewed by the Ducks. That was a whole thing this past weekend. But we'll see. Not as of recording, not much news coming out of the Flyers as far as that process.
They're making a list, Rachel.
They're checking it twice, I guess. But you talked about why the Panthers versus the Lightning series started so late on the schedule, and for once it was you ranting about the NHL schedule,
right,
and not me. And now, unfortunately, I have to go back to ranting about the NHL and them about them announcing stuff, because I'm just sitting here every day. It's like I feel like I check the NHL news and social media and all of that. When is the draft lottery, NHL? When is the draft lottery? Like, maybe by the time you hear this, they'll have announced it on Sunday later in the day. But it has been infuriating. We all have lives to plan, and we need to know when we're going to start getting nauseous about this lottery. When are we going to start like doing some extra spins on Tankathon just to make ourselves feel better? Like, we have to plan our anxiety, NHL.
That's fair.
So let us know what we are doing here. So that is my nemesis of the week.
All right, mine's a little different. Mine is, if I ever was to be elected governor or president of the United States, here's what I would change: law of the land or law of the state. Every highway sign that says there's food has to have a mileage counter on it. It has to tell me exactly how far it is to Dunkin' Donuts or to McDonald's or to Panera Bread or whatever. I don't want to get out off the highway and then it says, oh, it's still to the right. Oh, it's still to the right. Meanwhile, I'm like already 2 miles off the road and I'm still trying to find food. It's basically roadside clickbait, and I hate it, and that needs to change.
Yeah, I do think that's the case in many cases. Now, the one thing that I think they could tweak is when there's the sign on the freeway that says, here's your food options at this exit, the mileage isn't there. The mileage does come into play most of the time on the exit ramp where they say, veer to the right for this fast food joint and veer to the left. A lot of the times it does have the mileage.
But you could be duped already because it could say 2.4 miles, and it's like, why did I get off?
Well, this is also the reason why I don't actually get off the highway for said food option unless I can see the big giant sign on the side of the road.
Sometimes
and I know
we'll do
it's
that,
super
but sometimes
close,
you don't have that
right?
luxury, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you have to go further off the highway, I get it. But I kind of stick to I can see the giant McDonald's sign that's literally right next to the road. Or I know it's like a truck stop situation and they're going to have options there, right? Or it's like a Wawa situation. What you're getting there and you can go to the deli or whatever. But I think, there's sometimes in more rural areas where it's unclear or there's like some terrible road construction and you can't figure out how to get to the place on the other side of the road.
It's roadside clickbait. That's what it is. That's my new term for that.
Okay, I think that's fair. And it's fair, I think, more like less so with the restaurants than with the other stuff too, like lodging or gas. And especially gas when you're like desperate to refill your tank.
Yeah.
Like, where is this gas station? So I get it. I get it. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about the Kate's line as well as Phantoms Tuesday, and we'll know who the Phantoms are playing in the next round of the playoffs. We'll preview that and talk about those standout performances. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. Send in those mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts. Let us know what you want to do with the goalie situation on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. It's every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. You can get local analysis on a national scale with NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.